So a viewer recommended to me a $35 foam cutter in a comment. I should wouldn't say recommended, mentioned a $35 foam cutter in comments of my video on the Haggard Hut. So I bought it to try it out. And to be honest, I bought this thinking it was going to be terrible and expected to return it and I would make a fun video about it or something like that. And spoiler alert, I think I'm gonna keep it. It's not great, but it works. It gets the job done. I can't speak about the longevity of this wire. A lot of people in the reviews said that the wires break quite easily, but they give you a few extras with it, and they're super easy to make your own with a washer and the proper wire. So I don't see it being too much of an issue. There's not much electronic stuff on here, not much to go wrong. It's a power adapter, a switch, and then the wire completes the circuit. I opened it up and show you earlier. It would be pretty easy, I think, to put a potentiometer in here or some other way to control the electricity going through it to make it adjustable. But anyway, let's hop into where I show you guys some cuts and kind of my overall thoughts. We'll put it together, take it apart, do all that kind of stuff. Thanks. I'm really excited to talk about this one. I just expected it to be junk, and I was just gonna return it and buy a Proxon. I mean, that's the one, right? That's the one everybody gets, and obviously it is a lot better than this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say this is better than a nice foam cutter like a Proxon. I'm just saying, for $35, it worked, and I was very impressed. Runs on 6 volts, by the way. Assumed it would be 9 or 12, but it wasn't. Wire connects on the bottom to this little adjustable plate, and then up on the top just hooks on there. And I don't think people adjusted this when they got it very often, because a lot of the reviews said that the wire was so loose that you would just push the wire right into the plastic and melt the plastic. But if you tighten it up, you don't really have that problem unless you push way too hard. Get it tightened up, and we'll just kind of throw it back together here. It slides in and out pretty simply. And then you can use it as a handheld cutter, which I demonstrate a little later on here. So, and it's in here pretty good. It feels nice and sturdy. The bar doesn't have a terrible amount of flex in it when you're actually using it. So let's plug her in and test it. Wait 30 seconds and try it. Boom, cuts right through. And as you can see, I was very thrilled with how easy and fast it is. I've never had a foam cutter. So I just tested out cutting through here, and it's an inch thick foam. So I had to, kind of push a little slow. You can't adjust the temperature on this, so you have to just adjust how fast you're cutting through it depending on how thick it is, how thick material is. So I wanted this to cut strips, thin strips. That was my main goal with this thing. So I'm going to test that out right away, and it works really, really well for that. A little bit of wobble when I pull it out there, and I just kind of just tapped it a little bit to see if it stops, and it doesn't really actually affect your cutting. I didn't notice that being a problem at all once I was actually using it. I'm gonna try a little thinner piece here, and as you can see, I get this just razor thin foam piece out of it. Super useful for something like shingles or all kinds of stuff. You can just get this really thin foam. It's great stuff. I want to see, what kind of shapes I could cut out. I'm just freehanding random things, and I wanted to see, if I kept cutting for a long period of time, would it keep going? I mean, would the wire cool down if it didn't have enough juice going through it, so to speak? But yeah, it just kept cutting. None of my tests or reviews on this are scientific or in any way. I'm not a foam cutter expert. Just bought this little guy to try out, and yeah, you could do all kinds of cool stuff with it for such a cheap little piece. Pulled it out to try it as a handheld cutter. I mean, and of course it works well. It's the same thing, just not slid into its little table piece. But it would be super handy for, I don't know, if I'm cutting something really big, something I needed to move the cutter around and not the piece around. Could come in handy. It works, functions like it's supposed to, and just pops right back in. I was able to cut this pretty wild shape out of the foam. So, pretty cool. I can see where it would have its usefulness. Not exactly in the demo that I just showed. I could have done that while it was still in its piece, but you get the picture, okay? It's cool stuff. Pops in, pops out, bada boom. All right, let's rip some thick boy pieces here. This probably, I don't know, 3 inches thick. So I go through it here, and it's cutting. I was pushing a little too hard. I should have gone slower. So I did actually push the wire into the plastic a little bit, like the reviews are saying that they did. But this is on a big piece, and I was pushing too hard. So I'm gonna say this is a little more on me than the foam cutter. If I went a little slower, I think it would have been just fine. Or maybe if I tightened up the wire just a little bit. You can see how much it moved afterwards, and you can see the little smoke plume come up right here as well. That's the plastic melting off of the wire a little bit here. So that's more on me though. I noticed there was a slight angle in the piece of foam that I cut, so I checked how square the wire was at the table, and it's actually it's pretty close. It looks better in real life than it does on this funky angle here. And it turns out the plastic shelf I was using as a guide is actually the part that was crooked and not the wire itself. But I kept going anyway. I mean, I wasn't really going for exact stuff on here, and just throwing some more cuts in there. And tried it on some foam core too without the paper. Of course, you gotta rip the paper off. Works like a dream. Of course, you expected it to, but gotta try it anyway. So let's take it apart. It's just a couple of screws, a couple of Phillips head screws, really easy to take apart. No special screwdrivers or anything required. It just pops right off, and as you can see, it's really simple. You could easily repair this, and I don't really picture it breaking at all. The electricity just comes in through the red wire here to the switch, grounded to the bar here. Switch sends power through the wire up to the bar, and then comes back around to the ground. Complete circuit. So yeah, that's it. Just pops back together. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I expected this to be junk, but I think I'm gonna hold on to it. I think it'll work just fine for super basic things that I need it for. And I think it's $35 well spent. I don't know if I would say go out and buy one. I think you should still maybe support a company like Proxxon that makes really nice stuff for this hobby. But yeah, not a bad little piece for 35 bucks.